The goal of the video today is to set up your computer for MISY350. There are a lot of components to web development, and so this video is going to be very important, and I encourage you to walk through it carefully, step by step. It'll save you a lot of time. Trust me, I've taught this class many years. The starting point is Python. If you have used Python in previous years, you're probably going to be okay. But there are two main releases of Python. There's Python 2 and there's Python 3. Python 2 is largely on its way out, and it has been replaced by Python 3. I'm guessing that in previous classes you have used Python 3, and pretty much for the purposes of our class, any version of Python 3 will be fine. If you aren't sure though, it would be a good idea for you to install any version greater than 3.6, just to make sure that you're all set. I am out of python.org, and I'm at the downloads page, and they show all the versions that are available for you to download. It doesn't really matter, again, which version you download here, because we're not going to be using some of these small incremental changes, but it is something that is good to know. That is your first step. Make sure you install Python. The second step is to download Anaconda. Now, Anaconda is a tool that helps organize different environments, and you probably used it in, if you took me for MISY 408, you may have used it in that class. We're going to use it also for 350 because it really does help in terms of organizing environments. To download, you're going to want to go to the individual edition of Anaconda, and from here, if you go to the download button, you'll see there's different versions down here. You, of course, are probably going to be using either Windows or Mac OS. You can use either 64-bit graphical installer. You should be fine to download those. Now, once you get Python or Anaconda and Python installed, the next thing you need to install is the DB browser for Sql Lite. This is a little utility that we're going to be using on occasion in class, and so just to get this out of the way will be very useful. Sql Lite is the database that we're going to be using for Django, with Django, and unfortunately internally there's no way to actually see the data from within the tool that we're going to be using, and so which is VS Code. But this tool is an external tool that will allow you to actually see the data and edit the data. So it's a nice tool to have in case you need it. So please do install that as well. Once you have that done, what you need to do is load up Anaconda, and you should see something along the line that looks like this. Now, Anaconda is organized in a series of environments. Environments allow you to have specific or different versions of, say, Python installed in case you need different versions for different purposes. It also allows you to install different applications. What I'd like you to do is, I'd like you to go over to the environments area here, and I want you to create a new environment called MISY350. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with you. Type in MISY350, no space. Make sure you don't use spaces in this class, because spaces, generally speaking, are bad. Under Python, you're going to want to choose a version. Again, it doesn't largely matter which version you choose as long as it is 3.6 or higher. If you installed Python a few minutes ago, that should be available to you now. If you don't see it, you might want to reboot your computer just to make sure that it does pick up the newest versions of Python. But any of these versions will be fine. I'm going to use 3.8. Again, should not make a difference. So we're going to go ahead and create that environment. Once that environment is installed, an environment, again, allows you to install a unique collection of tools or utilities or libraries. You notice, for example, that I have deep learning set up. That was from my 408 class. I don't need, for example, many of the libraries that I used in 408 for Django, and I don't need Django for 408. So this allows me to kind of organize those different packages. Once the 350 environment comes up, you'll see that by default certain utilities are installed. What we want to do though is we want to add Django. So we want to go to not installed and then go to Django. Now, Django is pronounced with just the J. There's no D. You can just think of it as being no D. It's pronounced Django. No, not the Django, but Django. So we're going to choose Django, okay? And we don't need the Azure. You'll notice it is 3.1.3. Again, as long as the version of Django is 3.0 or higher, you should be fine. If you go ahead and hit apply, it will go ahead and install a variety of supporting libraries. say apply, and it will go ahead and do that installation. Again, this is the libraries, collection of libraries that you are going to be using for MISY 350, and this is something that absolutely needs to be done. Once you get that done, we're going to go and we're going to install one other library, and it is called Pillow. Pillow is a library that is needed for graphics, and we will be needing it later in the semester. So check Pillow, again hit apply, and it will go ahead and install Pillow along with some supporting libraries, and you should be all set to go. Now once Pillow is installed, you have your environment set up. So if you go back home here, you will see, for example, that a variety of tools are here. Now right now my VS Code is installed. You may see an install button right there. If you see an install button, you want to go ahead and click the install button because you want to install VS Code under your MISY 350 library. Whenever you start up VS Code, it is important that you start it from the MISY 350 library. If you don't, you will not get Django. So one of the things you might think about is if you're running this and it doesn't recognize that Django exists, it's likely because you installed or started a VS Code rather from the wrong environment. Make sure, again, this says MISY 350 from now on. You should be okay. Go ahead and launch, and we should be all set. Now you have you probably have nothing over here in your window, and so what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add a 350 folder. So if I go over to Finder, or if you're using, for example, Windows, you're going to of course use Windows Explorer, and if I go over to Desktop, I'm going to add a new folder, and of course I'm going to call it MISY 350. Now I would encourage you to add this to your desktop, then it becomes very easy to find. Once that's created, I'm going to go back to now Visual Studio, VS Code, and I'm going to say File, and I'm going to say Add Folder to Workspace, and of course I'm going to go to Desktop and MISY 350. If you add that now, that folder is going to be there for you, and from the rest of the semester you'll have it available, and you can create projects now inside that folder, and that's where you're going to be working from now on. That's it for the video for today. I hope this makes perfect sense to you, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.